Hello everybody. Today I'd like to talk a little bit more about the side of my life that pertains to like the visions and stuff. And so that's why I created a playlist for this subject matter, the JodyVision. And I thought today I kind of want to recap a little bit about the whole history of my story and kind of bring it up to where I'm in my timeline. So this is some of the stuff leading up to me leaving from Denver to move to Montana. And so today I want to talk about the difference between visionary state, fantasy, and dreaming. Dreaming is somewhere in the middle of that because to one extreme, let's say we're talking fantasy, let's go to this extreme first. Fantasy is a self-generated experience, like you're kind of creating like maybe a movie in your head, or imagining, you're playing make believe in your head, so this is something we do when we're little kids, is we do make believe. And sometimes as adults we might do make believe as well. You might imagine, you see a member of the opposite sex and you start imagining things, right? That's fantasy. And so that's kind of where I feel like people seem to think that what I'm talking about is 100% fantasy because I'm attracted to Bill Lee, for instance. And that's where I want to clarify that normally I wouldn't talk to somebody like that in his position where I'm at in my position, unless we met on a professional level or through the right channels. So the problem here is that I've met him in a wrong way. Like I haven't met him through the right channels or in a more conventional, socially conventional type of way. Instead, it's been because I've been getting the visions throughout my life that made me want to meet him. And so at some point I realized these are probably just visions that were really strong ones, because I had learned about it before kind of having come into this realization. And so I've always been strongly skeptical all the way through this too, like this guy's not going to appreciate me. And so and the thing that makes the visionary state the opposite of fantasy is it's more like it's being projected onto you. Like if you decide to watch my video, for example, this is not your imagination, rather this is coming from my imagination or my mind in general, where I'm the one projecting the conversation. I'm kind of drawing a scenario for you to imagine in that sense. And you're just on the other end perceiving it. So when you go to visionary state, that's pretty much what that is. It's a form of communication where the beings on the other side kind of create this projection of an experience where it feels just like normal reality. And so there's a few really good movies where something like this is happening. Like if you watched Contact with Jodie Foster, they had to create a personality to be able to talk to the woman. Otherwise, these beings, they operate on a really high level. Like they don't even have an embodiment. So it's just a really lot of fun speculation to like how conscious presence can exist on so many levels. Because if you look right here at Earth, from little bugs to bigger animals to human beings, we all function differently based on the avatar that we're in. For example, we have a 3-part brain, and so we're a neocortex bearing mammal, and so we function, we can facilitate being scientifically creative and all this good stuff, where the basic animals, at least the warm-blooded animals that have a 2-part brain, they can facilitate feeling love. And that's part of our survival, where a basic animal, like a cold-blooded animal, particularly like reptiles and all of those, only have a basic animal brain. So we are made to be able to facilitate a certain level of experience for conscious presence to act out. And so we're also finding out we're in like an ecosystem on Earth here, where like all the different organisms and things all kind of need each other. Well, what we're going to discover next is that in the higher realm, in the lighter layers of reality and in the living universe, are types of conscious existences that are beyond our perception. So when I was in one of these visions, for example, I was told that they are someplace where they can see us, but we can't see them. So that adds confirmation to these type of beliefs that there's a spirit world where the beings there, they are functioning on a higher level and they can perceive things that we can't perceive. So that's where it's kind of intimidating sometimes to think, oh my God, like I'm never alone. Like you never know when you're alone or not, or, that's kind of scary. But going to visionary state, when you first recognize it's happening, and when it really smacked me in the face back in 2000, was very intimidating, knowing that like something's hijacking my mind and putting me through all this stuff. So now dreaming is somewhere in the middle, because when you go to sleep at night, like all kinds of levels can be attained, from you just having a, self-babble, you know, so our dreams a lot of times they're just self-babble, and you're just going through whatever you're thinking about all the time. Sometimes you have dreams that are like straight up, like it's like remote viewing, like, and then later on it's like that's exactly what I was dreaming about. So you almost feel like that was like you were in a state of reality, but you didn't realize that, because then you wake up in your bed and then you just think that you were dreaming, but in fact you were in a state of reality. And I did a video about September 11, that big tragedy in New York City. And that's, I think, a classic example of, you know, I thought I was dreaming, but I was in a state of reality where I was witnessing a very tragic event that was going to impact, it was going to impact everybody's future on Earth, actually. So that's probably why it was important to see that. So when I talk about, you know, dreaming or go to visionary state, and if it's like a type of remote viewing or anything that serves as a prophecy, I feel like it's important enough to be presented to me in these visions. And that's where, you know, when we look at the subject matter of a guy named Bill Lee, who's a semi-famous rock star, that already reduces the sense of importance. Then you're like, well, Jody, you just have a crush on this rock star, and now you're fantasizing so hard that you think you're over here. And that's not true. It's really the other way around. I feel like this is somebody like I would find intimidating. So when we go through the stages of the unfoldment, I want to look back at the first phase is like kind of the Billy days when, you know, I had no idea what was going on. It just seemed like a regular person. And like, so there's kind of three groupings. In 1982, I was in kindergarten, and he was staying with Rosie and Howard Clearlight. And so I did some talks about those guys in my other videos. And if you're an old friend of mine, it's interesting because I actually became friends with those guys. I made friends with Rosie in 1996. Met Bill Lee for the first time in 1996. Well, in the visionary state, it was like Rosie was taking care of Billy, his younger self, who was 8 years old. You know, kids are like, I'm 8 going on 9. That's what Billy would say. And so in those three groupings, you know, like there was like a few instances where I met Billy where he was staying with Rosie and Howard. And then the next grouping would be 1983. Like, I know it was after Power, Corruption, and Lies came out, and we used to go to my mom and dad's friends, Bill and Stella. They lived on the Navy base because he was in the military, and I think she was somebody that worked with my mom downtown, like, because she was like working for like the Conch tour train or something at the ticket booth. So it's very interesting because these were real friends of theirs. Like Rosie and Howard, that was only in the visionary state, so they don't know each other. But Stella and Bill, these were real friends. But like I went over to their house, and they had Billy over there a few times. And then in 1987, so my dad decided to write Bushido, who started the label Third Mind Records. And it's interesting because it was like right after they signed Frontline Assembly, and he was just telling me it's weird how I really like this band. I don't know what Bushido means, but, you know, I've been asking to go to karate. I've been asking for a synthesizer. You know, maybe there's some correlation there. Like, but I just really liked that one song they did. It had a really good techno sound, so I kept asking my dad to play that. He'd say, what do you want to hear? And I'm like, well, let's listen to Bushido, because I just wanted to hear that song again. And I liked it because I'm like, that's what I want to do. That's the kind of music I want to play. So Bushido wrote back and said, you know, they would like to help me someday if I want to get in the music business or something like that. You know, it was very encouraging. So, you know, I've talked about this a number of times, but at the same time recommending Frontline Assembly. This is something she might be interested in as well. And so, like, when I seen Billy in those third groupings, it was one of those things, like, you know, like I used to sneak off after school with my boyfriend Juan, and I went to Visionary State and met Billy over there, and so it was a really colorful experience, which I've talked about in other videos, but I'm just going to kind of mention like the part where, you know, I was a little bit worried about getting caught. Like I was always trying to make sure my sister didn't catch me coming home late. So I had to try to get home before she does, you know, and because otherwise she's a tattletale and she likes to get ammunition like that, right? So especially if she found out what we were doing, because Billy was teaching me about sex and stuff like that. And then, so I was like really embarrassed about what he talked me into doing. And I was like trying to hurry up, get dressed. And as I was running out the back door, he's just like, you know, you need to be on your best behavior. Oh, you can't tell anybody what we're doing, and we're trying to get you into the music business. And so like I seen him one more time, like right after summer break, like right at the beginning of 6th grade. And he kind of gave me that really big reminder. But in each of these groupings, so it's just really important to point out in each of these incidents, in each case, Billy often said, this is very important. I need you to listen to me. There's a couple times where it's like, you need to be on your best behavior, which I can see why there's a lot of things that have, made me react and do things that are, I'm tempted to do naughty things. I haven't gone too far, but it's mostly me. I shouldn't have, said some things that I've said, especially in public, for example. So that's something where, I'm guilty and I owe an apology for stuff like that. But like, that's where like, I'm somebody that, I get really angry at people that are kind of pushing me around, and I kind of want to kick their ass too. So that could apply to any situation that he may not be aware of at all, right? So anyways, with him saying that, a really big one that always comes up though is, please, whatever you do, don't forget who I am, or you may never see me again. And so like that third time I seen Billy, I was trying to go to a different bus stop because the kids at my bus stop were bullying me. And like, he comes running out of Rosie's. There's like, you can't go to my bus stop. And I'm just thinking, it doesn't make sense because, I thought he was from Austria or some shit. And I didn't think he was going to school with me. But he's like, you can't go to my bus stop. You got to go back to your bus stop. And I try to say, but the kids over there picking on me and, I want to try a different bus stop. And he goes, well, you have to do what I say because you're my wife. And so I got mad at Billy because, he was kind of using that to boss me around and ordering me to do something I didn't agree with. And so then he got really mad at me and he started yelling, no, and Billy was like this. He was like swinging like this. So the young version of Bill Lieb is coming at me like this, and he was hitting me right over the head. And, it was just like reality. It's like any of these times that I met Billy, I didn't think I was dreaming or anything, like, and so like I thought of, so this is where, it's kind of interesting because like on one hand, I'm going to visionary state, hearing about Bill Lieb, even if the character wasn't 100% accurate, like, and I thought Bill Lieb had curly hair when he was a kid, but he's got pictures on Facebook or whatever where he's got really straight hair with straight bangs. It doesn't look anything like I remembered. And actually, I did this quick sketch because like right after me and Billy fought, he was walking away from me and he was looking back over his shoulder and he had on a blue hoodie. And I always remembered those curly cues, And so like the point being is I'm like right in the middle of that fight. I was just like, okay, my mom and dad fight a lot and I don't want to end up like my parents. And I just thought, the best thing to do is fight back. Even if I lose, I'm just like, it doesn't matter. He's going to kick my ass either way. So I came back at Billy, and hit him. I just just followed suit. I did exactly what he was doing. I just used him as, and so not a lot of fighting skill there, but it was just the heart that I had to fight back, but was important. And, but I really felt bad because, it did seem like it was hurting him, and he was sort of like, he had this look on his face, and I can still remember, I should actually draw that too. He's just like, the big eyes, the mouth dropping, and then he was just like, you better not forget who I am or you may never see me again. And so like, I went back to my bus stop and I was crying so bad, and my sister's like, what's wrong, Jody? And I said, I just beat up Billy. I was so heartbroken that I just beat up my friend because I really didn't have any friends yet other than my sister and my cousin. I felt like I wasn't making new friends. And this is still like my first year in the Florida Keys. And so like, man, I was just really like happy to have him for a friend, like I didn't care about getting married and stuff. I'm like 6 years old, right? But I was really upset, and I was really upset that I hurt him because it's like, I didn't expect him to be easy to beat. Like, I don't know if I could say I won the fight, but like he definitely stopped fighting me. He backed off. He looked surprised. And I just thought his hair felt so soft, like I think I hit him on the shoulder or two. And also, it's just like, wow, he's like, not as tough as you think. Like he's, maybe more delicate than you think or something like that. But here's the interesting coincidence. So another time I went over to that bus stop and I thought I saw Billy again. And he's like, I told you not to go to my bus stop. You need to go back to your bus stop. And then I lost track of him and I was asking the kids, where did Billy go? And I couldn't find him anywhere. And it's like I was looking all over for Billy, and that's the bus stop where I would meet Juan Long. So Juan Long would come up and call me names, and he was calling me ugly and all this stuff. So one day, what I was going to tell you before we get on to Juan Long. Okay, so like the very next year after me and Billy fought, I was back at my normal bus stop, and there was this kid named JP. He was actually a little bit younger than me, but he was trying to show off. And he'd come at me and he would call me, booger eater and all this stuff because they caught me picking my nose. And because somebody saw me pick my nose, because how you get an itchy nose? Like, I'm just a little kid. I'm just trying to scratch my nose up my nostril. And the person's like, oh my God, you're picking your nose. So I said, I just went like that for pretend, you know, and I was like, nom, 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 nom. And then it became like my new nickname. So like JP was screaming booger eater and all this, and he was walking me down and I was walking back. And so that's why I came at him. And I kind of contribute that experience to that fight I had with Billy. So this is just a visionary state, but it gave me, you know, an experience that I can play off of later when I needed to fight in another instance. So, you know, he didn't throw the first punch, but he was approaching me. I was backing down. And then he ran home with a bloody nose. And his mom came back just on time for the school bus, and she got me up in front of the whole bus and told me, don't ever touch your son. And like, you know, she had no idea what he did to deserve that, right? But that's where, you know, a couple years later, that's when I ended up at the bus stop where I'd meet Juan, and he was calling me names. And so I tried to fight him. I thought I could do the same thing to him that I did to JP, right? So I thought I could come at Juan and just whack him in the face. Actually, I was kind of throwing punches like this at him, and he had been to karate, so he took a nice step back and made enough distance, and he kicked me right in the solar plexus. And then a couple years later, you know, he was like the cool kid on the bus that sat at the back, you know, and and he used to yell ugly to me out the window. And then one day, right at the end of 5th grade, he was asking me, you know, he comes up alongside me, he's like, Jody, he's like, you know, I've always liked you, and I want to invite you to come be my practice girlfriend, but you have to keep it a secret. And I'm like, yeah, but you've always called me ugly and all that stuff. And he goes, well, that's because I know you're not popular, and I'm just trying to protect my reputation, and da-da-da-da-da. So I thought, okay, you know, he said the right things. Like, I don't know, like, if that's everything, but he did say enough stuff. And then getting to know Juan was really neat, because, so Juan's like, you know, he's Cuban. He's, like, mostly white, but kind of Cuban. And, but he was just a really smart and interesting kid, and like we only got as far as like holding hands, and we're probably going to start kissing next. But this other kid came over named Lamar that lived over that way by Billy's, and Lamar was thinking about having sex with me, like, and so it's kind of weird because it just seemed like it was kind of getting closer to the, you know, and that's when Billy appeared to me, and he took me aside and said, listen, so when he was, we were in that vision, an important part of our conversation, which I think is true and interesting, and it's probably true for a lot of people, but you know, he warned me that, you know, a lot of boys, you know, there's certain boys that are going to really hurt my feelings and disrespect me, and he wanted to show me the difference. Like this is how people kiss. Like, a lot of people do it wrong. They stick their tongue in your mouth, and it's really nasty. So he was like explaining all this. Like, I want you to know what it's like to be loved, because this is going to happen to you. And so this is really true. And a lot of that is sort of correct. But like, but man, I think some of that stuff just kind of got put on the back burner, you know, like I kind of forgot about some of the stuff with Billy over there, because somehow I just blended it together with Juan, and I often thought, you know, that me and Juan did all that stuff. And so it kind of, it's one of those things where my memory had to be triggered. So this is where, you know, it's a little less believable, but it took a very long time. So I could always remember the first part, like the first grouping. The second grouping, I needed a little help. So when I got to Big Fork in 2010, I experienced a time where I went from 1983 to 2010 to see myself in the future. So that kind of helped open up that grouping, and I started remembering Bill and Stella a little bit better. But then, like 2019, that third grouping really started to unfold, and that's where I'm like, oh my God, you know, it's like, it's really embarrassing. And that's where, like, if I tell it, you know, like, okay, so the younger version of Bill Lee, you know, took me aside and taught me how to kiss. That sounds like a good fantasy about a very, you know, adorable rock star kind of guy. Or, you know, maybe halfway between. But to me, this is not my fantasy. This was only a projection from the visionary state, right? And so that's where it's like a very, you know, sketchy situation. So where we go back to like me having skepticism goes all the way back to the beginning, even when Billy said, you know, by the time you meet me again, I'll already be famous. And I'm thinking, well, I'm 6 years old, and it's like, if he's going to be famous, he's not going to talk to me. You know, I could already tell, like, the popular kids at school, like, how that works, and you don't make friends with people like that, you know, you get bullied. Okay, and then, but then later on, you know, like, after we started listening to Frontline Assembly, I kind of remembered thinking, didn't Billy say that he was going to call his band Frontline Assembly? And then we moved over to a neighborhood where, you know what, I just happen to have a map of it too. So we moved over to the neighborhood where I met Billy in the visionary state. And so, like, every time I went past that house, I kind of remember that, you know. So I kind of hope I don't waste too much time on this. But, you know, I'm going to talk to you while I'm looking, just in case I find my map. I think it's a fun topic, or I wouldn't be sharing this, you guys. So like, and then, like, if Billy wants to watch this video, you know, I hope he, you know, kind of listens to me and kind of tries to understand this, because like, I don't want to be like some weirdo or whatever that's like coming on to someone that's like kind of, you know, not available, off limits, and particularly not interested. But like, you know, I've had to do a lot of things to kind of test and trigger, and like, you know, I lost track of that map. That was, oh wait a minute, it could have been on one of these, but let me see here. Yeah, that's too bad. Anyways, I really wanted to use that map as a classic example of all the like synchronicities and stuff with Bill Lee, because like man, what the fuck happened to that? That's just how my life is. Like, just when I thought I knew where something was, it's not. It should have been right here. That's okay. But I used to have to walk back and forth past that house, and I would think of Billy, and I would think, you know, when he said he was going to call his band Frontline Assembly, and so that's where I had a lot of skepticism. Like, maybe it's just a coincidence, you know, like there's a lot of people named Bill, and not to mention maybe Frontline Assembly sounds a little, I don't know, like if that sounds like something a number of people might have thought of for their band, you know, like maybe that's not like a really original sounding name, because that could easily happen. Like somebody goes, I wanted to name my band such and such, but somebody else took that name first, you know. So in my visions, Billy was like just 2 years older than me, but then I found out in reality he's really 19 years older than me. And so I didn't have that information quite yet, but that's where I have this picture I saved from the magazine when I was like 18 years old. My dad gave me that magazine with his picture on the front. And of course, it had to have been a visionary slip, because he's like, isn't that your little friend from down the street? And so that's when I started thinking really hard. It's like, you know what? He is definitely the same person because of the conversation, but the age is wrong. Looking at his picture, I'm just like, man, that can't be Billy. He's too old, and his hair looked really dark. I noticed his hair was a little bit, you know, wavy or kind of curly looking on top. And but, you know, I'm just like, you know, and I hate to say it, but just, he looks like he's too old. Meaning, you know, I could tell he was probably in his 30s, and for like an 18-year-old girl, that's just too old. And and I just thought, well, you know, maybe I should write him anyways. You know, maybe it means something, and you know, we should try to connect regardless. And but I'm like, nah, dude. I was like thinking, man, I can't write him and tell him this stuff, dude. He's not gonna appreciate it. But I had another visionary dump in '98. Like a couple different things came through where that was the one where I was telling you I had you know, this was like a phone call from Rosie that never happened, and so it's cool because I was able to really go over it with her. But like in the visionary state, you know, so she's telling me she's really, you know, like an extraterrestrial. She can see us, we can't see her, and just really filled me in on some stuff, and just really encouraged me to write Bill Lee for the first time, you know. And so the only way I could do it, I just didn't have the confidence. So I actually took LSD. But it still didn't change the content of my message. It just gave me the courage to write it down and mail it. So I kind of let it be crazy, you know, like I just let them, you know, like if they don't understand it, let it be crazy to them. And if he does understand it, he's going to see clear through it. And so that's always been kind of my approach to Bill Lee is, you know, like, you know, maybe he'll think it's crazy, but then maybe he'll be able to see through it. So some of the stuff I think I throw in there acts kind of like a screen, you know, so like the true content is there, but there's a little bit of screening on it too, so that way, you know, like in 2005 I tried to write him a serious letter, but then I saw I bought this album Noise Unit Voyeur, and thought, you know, I prophesied that Bill Lee would get a divorce. See, I found out he got married like years after I met his wife. Like I was thinking, I didn't know who she was, but I've talked a lot about that bad experience I had with meeting FLA in '98 and in '99. It took me years to understand that lady was his wife, and you know, she was over there trying to make sure Bill Lee ain't sleeping with his groupies or something like that. So, you know, that's the idea that I got. Whether it's true or not, that's that picture I'm getting. So, but yeah, I'm kind of jumping all over because I just wanted to talk about how this grouping is just interesting to me, because when you look at it, there's like Billy always saying, you know, whatever you do, don't forget about me. Then I kind of realized it was happening, and then later on I was getting some more visionary slips that kind of got me to go write them. I went to meet him, and it seemed to be a very big disaster, you know, so I explained all that. But then when I went to see my dad that Christmas, like we saw them in November, then in December I'm down in Florida, so between Christmas and New Year's I had this really interesting vision where my dad said he was reading a book, and it sounded like it was about me and Bill. And the crazy thing is, it was filled with information to the extent where like some of it's still happening. Like I'm like, that's why it's interesting. It's like some of it still seems to be coming true. Like I remember that. So like so anyways, I'm kind of working up to like how I ended up wanting to leave Denver for Montana by kind of just recapping a little bit, like, you know, just in brief, you know, like going into visionary state, you know, between the age of 6 and 12, I kind of had no clue. And then at the age of 18, I started to get an idea that, hey, maybe I've been going into visionary state, but then I still had visionary slips up until like 99 without knowing about it. And when I went 99 into 2000, like, you know, everybody's tripping out Y2K this. I was one of the people laughing at all that, right? I just thought it was funny to trip up. But my year 2000 was pretty exciting because I did a time trip where I went from the beginning of November 99 and to the end of January 2000. I lived there till June. I came back to 99. And the thing is I skipped over Christmas and New Year's, you know, and when I got to the future, like I saw some of the gifts I got when I went to Florida, and I'm telling my friends, where did this stuff come from? Like, don't you remember you went to see your dad? You know, I'm like, no, I don't remember. It's like, and I was like, dude, I missed Christmas and New Year's. Like, and how am I ever going to get that back? And well, good thing is I did come back to this timeline, and I went, and it was, you know, those were some really good Christmases, like 98 and 99, but I had some colorful visionary slips around those that, you know, kind of helped make me interested in Bill. Because like when I met him, I'm just like, oh, this ain't ever gonna work out, you know, like he doesn't want nothing to do with me. But the visionary slips were kind of like still keep me kind of interested. But then in 2000, when I had the big reveal, so that's when I caught up to where I left off. It went on for a little bit, but then I had to really figure it out. Like, it's kind of being taught to me. So like the visions in the 98 visions, there are a couple different visions where I'm in the visionary state and they're telling me what it is, how it works and all that. So I was getting kind of educated, like, this is, you're in visionary state and here's how it works. Then they did me a nice time trip and then put me through that. So that's kind of more educational purpose, I think, because, you know, I'm not really getting anything too serious, but like I was told in some of these visions in 98 that I may also see what we call Armageddon, and that's kind of what we're considering as end times. And I think, well, if anything, that ties in with Bill Lieb a little bit. Maybe some of the stuff he's written about sounds like it has to do with end times, you know. Anyways, this is where like the difference between fantasy and, you know, is being self-generated, where the visionary state is being generated from another mind or conscious presence of some sort, and possibly in multitude. And this is where, you know, it sounds kind of schizophrenic and all this stuff, but there really seems to be a lot of confirmation out there that people are channeling in different ways, and I don't really have a really strong grip on it, and that's where I'm still exploring and trying to understand, you know, all this stuff. So I don't really have all the answers, but I know enough to know that when you go to a visionary state, it's not necessarily self-generated, and it's also taking information that's remote to you, like introducing people to you that you don't know already and telling you about stuff in the future, and sometimes even actually showing you the future. And so that's where it's like, wow, that's really impressive, you know, and I feel very honored if this is truly intended for my education and to be helpful. But the part that makes it difficult is by bringing me in contact with Bill Lieb, I don't feel like I've ever been able to communicate 100%, and you know, maybe he's just a nice guy and, you know, he wants his fans to like him. And so it's a little bit hard to read him because it almost seems like, you know, Bill kind of has a reputation for turning his back on people, so people want to come up and meet him, and he doesn't really like all this, you know, I guess he doesn't like being treated like a rock star and having people come up and be like, oh wow, blah blah blah, and then go brag about it like it's a life accomplishment or something, right? So, you know, I get that. So maybe he just doesn't want to engage in that type of interaction so much, but at the same time, he's also putting himself in places where there's going to be fans, like going to the bar where the fans hang out and doing that. So I don't know, maybe he's just trying to set an example, like, don't look at me that way, you know, don't look at me as a rock star that you want to meet me and brag about meeting me later. Maybe that's the lesson for people, but it doesn't, you know, and it's really kind of not good to get too involved with people, you know, and spread yourself too thin. You really only have time, so like it's a good practice to try to limit who like you really commit to in conversation and carrying on like a relationship as friends or whatever. But like anyway, so that's all understandable and smart and everything, but like for me, you know, like I've written ahead and I went to his autograph signing, and he and I asked him if we could talk, and he's like, well, why don't we have a party at your house, you know? So he sounded like more than willing. And then when we all went over to the we went to the goth bar and I went up and talked to him, I felt like he was willing to talk to me. He wasn't turning his back on me and stuff, but there was another friend and his girlfriend kind of kept coming up, and it just seemed like it was making a crowd, you know? And then there'd be somebody else come over and be like, oh, don't talk to Jody, you know? And so it seemed like as long as, you know, I was talking to Bill, everything seemed okay. And I felt like he respected me, you know, because I figured, you know, we were communicating, like he could respect me. He could tell I wasn't just another one of these, you know, typical people. Like maybe he could tell I know something, or, you know, something cool like that. Like I was hoping maybe he could tell I'm cool, and maybe he could tell I know something. But then, like, there were too many people kind of crowding around, and so, like, there was a miscommunication at the end of the night where I thought his wife was trying to stay in touch with me. She wanted my contact information, and I thought we were going to be friends, and I thought Bill came over to tell us where the party's at. And so I go and pick up all my weed and take it to this party, and I had the keyboard player, Chris Peterson, was the one to uninvite me and tell me I'm not welcome. So I got really upset, and I called Bill and talked to him, and he said, wait right there. And these other people came down from the other band and yelled, she's a stalker, you know? So I thought I was down there because I thought I was invited. So, like, it turned into, like, this thing where, like, the very next year, 99, I went to see their show, and I come out, and these people were chasing me in a van, going, there she is, and they, like, chased me for a while. And I kind of knew what that was about, you know, so I wasn't really afraid of them, but I made them follow me a little bit. But to be honest, I thought it'd be fun to, like, throw a rock at their window or something. So I looked everywhere for rocks and sticks and bottles. There was nothing, man. That place was picked clean. And so I made them follow me up the alley, and then I started to turn to go open their door, like, and they kind of chickened out, and they sped up the alley. And then I went down to the netherworld, and then Bill Lee went into the men's bathroom, and the drummer Jason came over and talked me into leaving. And so it made me feel really bad, you know, because I felt like it was just a misunderstanding. Like I thought I was invited to the party, and then it all snowballed, you know, with these people harassing me. And then at the bar, you know, we're back at that bar again, and there were some people going, look, there's the girl that was trying to get Bill Lieb in bed. So they were punishing me for trying to, like, go to their party. They were punishing me for trying to get Bill Lieb in bed. And I find out later, oh, well, there's this other lady named Bree that was trying to get with Bill Lieb, and she was a pretty good-looking lady, you know, maybe had good club status, and so she couldn't get with Bill because he's married, but she got with Kevin Key. So, like, those of you who know who Kevin Key is, you might know who Bree was. So, you know, to me, I feel like she was the groupie type, you know, she's like, you know, I'm a good-looking lady, I can get what I want, and so I'm going to try for Bill Lieb, and if that don't work, then I'll just go to Kevin Key. And to me, that's like, well, if I was doing the same thing as she is, you know, and maybe I was just trying to go to bed with my favorite artist or make a relationship, maybe I would go to Bernard Sumner, right? Go to Bernard, oh, he's married. Well, let's try Richard Kirk, you know, maybe he's single, you know. Like, you know, I want to marry a guy because I listen to his music or something. Like, that's not necessarily true, because, like, that's probably what people are projecting onto me is, like, you know, so what? I was listening to Frontline Assembly one day, and I'm just like, man, who is this guy? I need to find him and marry him, because if his cock is anything like that bass line, woo, doggy, you know, like, so it didn't really work that way. Instead, it's more like, when I was starting to figure out if Bill Lieb is the same person as my little friend, and I was listening to Frontline Assembly, you know, between the age of like 13, 14, 15, in that age group, I was listening to him thinking, this can't be Billy. And even then, he sounds pretty scary, you know. He has a lot of fury in his voice and all that. And then, like, the picture, and I don't remember which album it was, but it was before Tactical Neural Implant, like one of those two albums. And you open it up, and there's a picture of Bill in his leather jacket, and he's got those mirrored aviators kind of up like this, and he looked kind of like a dangerous person, you know, like, this can't be Billy, you know, this can't, you know, this isn't somebody I would think, this guy should be my boyfriend, you know. So if anything, Frontline Assembly was had more of an intimidating effect, rather, you know, like, this guy's too old, this music's too advanced, you know, and plus he's also very scary. So in a ways, that's kind of been my little joke, is that Billy is a big spooky scary he's a big spooky dragon breath. So I made some comics, like, if you've seen my cartoons where Bill takes this girl up to his hotel room, then he turns into a big scary monster and he eats her and her dog, you know. You know, so I've just tried to make light of it, because it's kind of something where, you know, me trying to determine if this is somebody who is somebody I would marry, right? So that's where, you know, he's been put in front of me, like, so, like, in that very first occasion in the Visionary State, 1982, very first occasion, you know, Rosie clear likes telling my parents, you know, his name is Baltus Van Vuren, but we call him Billy because it's easier. He came from Austria by a form of time travel. someday he's going to be a famous rock star known as Bill Lieb, and you guys need to look out for Frontline Assembly, and something about him coming by a form of time travel to meet his future wife. And I'm listening to all this and I'm thinking, I guess this is how things are done. And me and Billy are just sitting there on the floor looking at each other. And you see all those pictures of Bill where he always kind of like seems to like have his head tipped down, pointing his forehead, and just, that's exactly how it was in my visions, you know, like he was like that. He just seems kind of, you know, I don't know if that's bashful, you know, being bashful, you know. And ever since then, I've always, you know, imagined that person. If I hear the name Billy, I would always imagine that person. Like, would you bake me a cake, Billy boy, would you bake me a cake, charming Billy? So I see him, you know, with that, his roundy forehead and his curly cues, and he's holding the cake, you know, like that's what I envision when I hear that song every time, because I heard it like shortly after, and then like if nobody ever called him Billy, so there's another future incident, like so later on there was some crazy lady in a straight jacket and she would yell Billy, and this was at the convalescent center where my grandma was living, so my great grandma warned me, don't make fun of somebody like that, you could end up like that too. So maybe that was one of the coincidences that played into naming him Billy, because nobody calls Bill Lee Billy, I don't think. If anything, maybe Will or Willem, but never Billy. Anyway, so just like all these weird coincidences that kind of get drawn from the future and back into the past to make it interesting, and it kind of shows me the reality of it, like it's not just your imagination, this is absolutely real. And so that's kind of scary, and if I was Bill Lee, I'd be really upset too, you know. So I mean, that's why I tried to tell him, you know, I understand if this sounds crazy, you know, I mean, I've had to have all the skepticism in the world to go with it too, like, but, you know, listening to them tell all this stuff, and then, now, there's some things that are also incorrect, like Baldus Van Buren, that's another piece of information. So, like, 99 to 2000, I think, I was getting my mail, and I saw the name Baldus Van Buren, somebody that lived on the 3rd floor, and I kind of started making that connection, like, you know, Rosie said his name was Baldus Van Buren, he even said it the next time I seen him, and then, my friend Jason, in 98, I had a visionary slip where he was telling me, you know, Billy, sometimes he's staying upstairs at the building I live at, and I had another friend telling me, you know, sometimes record companies lease apartments, and that way when people are traveling to get work done, you know, like let's say a band had to fly into Denver to do some studio work, that they would let the band stay there. So like maybe that's why, you know, Billy could have been in my building, or some people from another band. Like my friend pointed out, didn't you see those one people? They're from such and such band. So this is all like stuff that's possible, but I don't really know. But like, I was told that Baldus and Van Buren are two different people's last name. There's, you know, like they don't know who I am or anything like that. And so it was really kind of upsetting to me, because I was kind of using that as a correlation. I was kind of excited, thinking, well, I was told I'm supposed to write him, so I tried to write him a letter. And that's kind of how I found out that he's not Bill Lieb. But so that's the stuff that makes me look crazy. But I was set up for that, because in 1982, that very first vision, it was like his name is Baldus Van Buren, but we call him Billy. But then me and him were having that conversation, and he goes, you know, his name is Baldus Van Buren, but he goes by Billy, you know, because his brother calls him a dirty name, and he can't say it because it's a dirty word. And I'm thinking it's probably bald ass. And so, but then he told me he's going to be known as Bill Lieb, and I'm like, well, why Bill Lieb? And he said, well, that's the name my father gave me. So that's where, you know, if you're a fan wondering, you know, if that's his birth name or not, maybe it is, you know. It's like hard to say, because it's also like only other one person named Bill Lieb in the world, and they were a Nazi general, an Austrian one too, and he was supposed to be a good Nazi general. That's why I started wondering, well, maybe it's a stage name. Maybe Bill's a history buff and he likes that name. Anyways, stuff like that. It's like, so like I'm getting given some information that's true, like this is Bill Lieb of Frontline Assembly and all that, but then you couple it with the like, you know, gonna marry me someday, playing in a band. That stuff sounds like it's probably not true. Baldus Van Buren, that's not true, but it was a detail that I would catch later. But the Baldus joke, so like my friend Dan, so back in 97, 98, I had this friend named Dan, and he was kind of a street guy that he was gay, and he'd go down to Cheeseman Park and, you know, pick up sugar daddies and stuff. And so I kind of got the impression that, you know, Billy was a sugar daddy, and he was telling me that Bill's name is Bob, and that Bob does cocaine, and Bob shaves his ass. And I'm thinking, well, you know, if you look at pictures of Bill Lieb, it looks like he shaves his armpit, so maybe he does shave his body, including his ass. But like stuff like that is kind of comical. Like, so the whole Baldus Van Buren, the bald ass, shaving his ass, those are all funny jokes. And the funny thing about that is there was also a time when I thought I was put in touch with Bill Lieb, and they were telling me his name was Bob, right? And so I found out recently that Bill Lee once wrote to somebody that he really loved in music, from Throbbing Gristle, Cozy Fanny Tootie. So he tried to write her a letter in reality and as a fan, and and she wrote back, and she sent a nice picture with a big letter, and she called him Bob. I'm thinking, well, that could just be another synchronicity, like like using that name Bob in the visionary state. Well, here's the funny thing. Okay, now I made friends with this girl named Kim, like I think probably 2006 or 2007, and probably before I went to see their concert in 2007, and I was telling her my story, because she was open to like psychic awareness and all that stuff. So I was telling her, how I took an interest in Bill Lee, and I'm still trying to resolve that. And so I showed her this magazine that's in Mirror Vision. Okay, and so she said, "That's Bob. I know that guy." And she said, he used to go to warehouse parties, like probably between 2002 and 2004. So I'm thinking, well, I was kind of getting impressions like 98. I was in the visionary state when Jason was telling me, Frontline Assembly are in Denver a lot because there's a recording studio here, and they don't like to let people know. And I was just thinking, well, that could be true. But she said his name is Bob, and she thought he was a nice guy, and he listened to her stories, and he was doing cocaine all night and stuff. And so it's, again, it could be somebody very similar. So I'm not accusing him of anything like that. But at any rate, when I talk about, so that's what I'm trying to clarify, like between my imagination and what's being bestowed upon me. Now, when we get to like, 2000, there were a lot of things going on in my head where like, okay, so the visions are being bestowed upon me, but I'm getting confused, and I'm trying to put together the bigger picture. So I may have had a false idea of what's going on because I was getting too much information at one time, and I'm also trying to like figure out and guess what's going on. So I kind of had some crazy ideas, like because my dad, one of my dad's best friends from Michigan, moved to Denver, and he was in the music scene, and he's like a producer. He had friends like Genesis George and Partotopia and all that stuff. So when my dad went out to to Denver in 1988, he got a chance to meet Genesis and the people at Topi, and I started thinking, maybe they made some kind of connection there. Like he contacted Bushido in 87, and 88 he was in Denver talking to some people like Kelly and all that, and so I started making some connection, like, maybe that guy Kelly, he, when I came to live with Kelly, or I came to Denver, I stayed with Kelly and got my own place, and he told me he lost interest in industrial music because he was disappointed in Jen, and he took off to California to do other things. Then I started getting paranoid, like, well, maybe Kelly's behind the scenes, and Topi's doing something, and like I thought maybe these people are pranking me and stuff. So I like started freaking out, and I got really upset, and I took all my Frontline Assembly, everything Bill Lee Wise, everything Psychic TV, and I had all in this bag that was so, it kind of had a thin string to it, but like it was just like this kind of bag with like, supposed to be like a backpack type of thing, but it just had these kind of thin straps, and I had it on one shoulder. It was so heavy, and I took it all to the used record store and got rid of it. I was just like ready to divorce all of this music because I just feel like it's, like it's fucking with me too much. And so that's why I don't have like that tape collection, and I didn't have any Frontline Assemblies left in it. So anyways, so that's like kind of where my imagination started to come into play too. So maybe I am getting these psychic dumps, but at the same time, me trying to guess, because, I'm not getting communication like from Bill Lee particularly, and that's where it's always made him a good person to like kind of play this role, to kind of like lead me. And so like I've tried to walk away from this a few times, kind of like after this I was like, okay, I need to walk away from this. But my stupid ass, I think I moved out of town and was living up in Greeley, and my friend had the internet set up, so of course I was going on there and I was trying to like explain, like on Mind Phaser, I thought maybe Bill Lee will read this. Like I was really just trying to come to peace with it and just share like what happened, what led up to this and all that. And I just I just really made things worse. And then I found out he was married. I'm like, okay, there's definitely somebody I'm never gonna marry. But but then I tried to sit down and write him another letter, and I kind of started thinking that might be his new girlfriend. And I started thinking, okay, maybe he's divorced. I prophesied he's gonna get the divorce. And so that's weird, because like so this is where we get into sometimes I don't have visions that are like that, but like dreams. Like, so right after I sent that letter in the mail, I dreamed that I was walking with Bill Lee down the sidewalk on South Broadway, And and he was just like, he was just trying to tell me, you know, he's too old or something. And he was like, Jody, I'm old. I just remember him saying that, and I looked over at him, and he was kind of old looking. It was just like he had all these like, alien marks moving all over his body. He looked like something out of a music video. So it was very surreal. But this is where like the imagination comes together with maybe something being projected upon us, and we're seeing something that's in remote viewing that is actually reality. So this is where, you know, it kind of splices together. So I think this is a classic example of, you know, so like I go into this Conoco station and I see this guy in a like a red shirt with like just the collar and a few buttons and a short sleeve, kind of a big guy, kind of short dark hair and a kind of a thin mustache, you know, like not too thick but not paper thin either. Anyways, I thought he was the employee there, and I thought he wanted to fight me, and I was trying to turn around and walk away, and I looked back and he's on the ground bleeding, and I was like running for my life. I didn't want to go to jail for something I didn't do, and it seemed like I ran over the mountains and far away, and I didn't know it at the time, but I think I ran all the way to Vancouver and went to Bill Lieb's house, and I just like I flew through his house, and I ended up sitting on the floor in his bedroom, and when I got up, there was a pregnant lady in his bed, and I knew it wasn't his former wife. I knew it was somebody different. And then me and Bill went outside and sat in this white van, which is like the van that I would see later. So that's where in 2007, I went to meet him at that show that so if you see that picture behind me, I've talked about that a number of times. So that was a really big deal. I felt like I finally got to hang out with Bill Lee. We all went to the club and everything. And so that night in the mosh pit, there was this guy that was kind of like, ah. He looked like a bully. Like I could tell he was kind of not cool in the mosh pit for a while. And then he was standing in front of me, and I just did something like this, and I turned him around. He was sitting on his ass. And I kind of laughed at him and said, that's what you get. So he came up and he went, bam, and he hit me really hard, like right back here. And some people were like, you know, if you want, we can do something about that, you know. And I said, don't worry, it was just an accident. He goes, no, it wasn't. Well, the guy ended up on the floor bleeding out of his nose. And so when I very first saw him, I thought, man, that guy looks like he just got off work from Conoco. But, you know, he had that kind of shirt on, but it was kind of like red and white stripes, so maybe not. But it's just that funny thing that thought crossed my mind. He looked like he just got off from Conoco. We're down at the Gothic Theater down on South Broadway, and like I think the Conoco's like right over there, so that's where it's interesting that the dream started out with me and Bill walking South Broadway, me walking in that Conoco, you know, in the dream, and then so the first half of my dream came true, but then the second half of the dream where I went to Bill's house and saw his pregnant girlfriend, I got revelation in 2011 when, you know, his ex-wife explained it to me that she was claiming to be pregnant back in 2005, hoping to get him to marry her, but she doesn't think he really got her pregnant, thought she was lying. And then Teresa, his other good friend, told me a similar story, you know, that and she was claiming to be pregnant back in 2005, hoping to get Bill to marry her. So that could be, you know, what I was seeing. So that's a type of remote viewing. So in 2005, I was seeing the pregnant woman at Bill's house who was claiming to, you know, she's claiming to be pregnant. Like I didn't gather like to get married, but they added that on. And so I can see why that's a big deal, you know, and for him to have to make a big decision if that's what he thought was happening. So, and then at the end of the dream, being in that white van, well, my friend Chris Smith was driving the white van the night we went to that show, and I got to take Jerry down to the club. Like my friend was driving, but I talked Jerry into riding with us so I could visit him a little bit, and then I talked Jeremy Ankle into riding back with us to the tour bus because I just wanted to visit with those guys a little bit. And I really wanted to talk to Jeremy because I also had some premonitions about, you know, Jeremy might possibly help me someday, and I kind of like Jeremy, so I was trying to talk to him, but then the guys were making jokes about like because we went out to the bar and we weren't supposed to be there, you know, it was kind of a special privilege to come in after hours. And I was telling Chris Peterson, like, okay, now whatever we do, we can't tell anyone, that's our little secret now. And he goes, well, Jeremy's got a little secret in his pants. Well, earlier on, it just seemed like there was a couple of suggestions to get with Jeremy or something, like kind of joking, like maybe I should have sex with him. And we're at the club, Bill said that like, maybe I should go dance with him. I almost felt like Bill was trying to put us together. Anyways, so it's just interesting how, like, when I'm talking about the dream state event where, like, okay, I saw Bill Lee walking down South Broadway, the guy at the gas station. So that was in reality, that's the guy I saw Carol Ann talking to like back in 99. 98 he was yelling groupies at me and my friend Chris, calling us groupies. And then in 99 I saw him talking with Carol Ann outside of that goth bar. And then he started screaming at me all these insults like, go away, you piece of shit. And so that's why I'm thinking, well, you know, if I'm correct, that person ended up punching me in the head later because he had that kind of seed of hate from those previous times. So, you know, I didn't realize, you know, Carol Ann was going around telling people something bad about me. But when I saw her, and I thought, I thought she wanted to be my friend, but I guess she's just part of these goths, you know, like, because there were already some goth people there that, you know, I had had an encounter with. So, anyways, let me see. So I'm kind of trying to wrap it up to where, like, we're getting to like 2007, 2008. I thought, okay, I'll go see Bill one more time. And I think I even brought him a letter telling him a little bit about that dream, right? You know, and so I had a really funny dream that I wrote to Bill Lieb, and he sent me something back, and it was a picture of him dressed like a woman. And I was thinking, you know, that's Bill's feminine side, you know, or something. And then I found out that Delirium was coming. So I went to see Delirium. And I just figured, well, if I can't sit down and talk to Bill Lieb, you know, I brought him some music and another letter, and it was his birthday. And so I just figured, if I can't talk to him, then I really need to give him a hug and make that a hug goodbye, and just sort of, you know, put this behind me and stuff like that. And so, you know, I was really trying to walk away from it. It's like, if I don't make the connection, I need to walk away. But, but that woman was there again. Like, so there was this woman, like 2006, 7, and 8, that would pick Bill Lieb up after his show, and that would be Jeannie. And so I just thought, well, maybe that's the girl he sees when he comes to Denver. So, like, you know, he's probably got stuff like that all over the country. Like, you know, if he's in Denver regularly, then that's who he, you know, dates and, you know, probably has for a sex partner. And meanwhile, you know, he's got Amelia back in Vancouver. That's supposed to be a steady relationship. So, anyways, I wanted to talk about when I get to Montana. Like, I do connect with her later, and I learned all this stuff, but it's just really interesting that I dreamt about her. And so this is where we're mixing a little bit of, you know, some of it might be my own projection, but I felt like this includes a lot of remote viewing and receiving information. But then the fun part was actually getting the confirmation now. So let me see. I think I had another colorful dream that Bill Lieb was, it was almost like he was in my peripheral vision, you know, like I didn't see him, but I just felt like he brought me home to like a new condo. And I can even describe it a little bit, but I just felt like he was telling me that he loved me and that I have everything I need now. And but then there was this lady with like kind of blondish curly hair and glasses, and she was screaming at me, and she was taking my things and throwing it around. And I wasn't quite sure who she was, but I almost suspect it could be Carol Ann, but I didn't recognize her at the moment. But it's just kind of weird having a dream where like Bill Lieb wants to take me home and what you call provide for me. But then this lady screamed at me, like, she's like, go home, Bob! She seemed to be defeated, you know? And so I don't know what that means exactly, but I can kind of see the possibility of me upsetting her like that in some way. But like, but then there's a lot of weird information, like, that I've also received, like, kind of scary stuff, like, you know, Bill Lieb, is kind of a predator to women, you know. He wants to sleep with these people, but he likes to make sure they're unconscious so they don't try, you know, bonding and kissing and hugging or anything like that. And so there's stuff like that. That's where you feel like, oh, you know, I'm not really sure what that's about, but like, so I'm getting this mixed information. Like, I don't know why I'm being shown to this person, but like the more I find out about him, I just feel like, you know, I feel like I care about him a lot and stuff, but at the same time, I feel like he's kind of like he's got a problem with women, and that he might enjoy, you know, kind of toying with women a little bit and stuff like that, you know. And so that's kind of the stuff I'm seeing. So I was told in those visions where my dad had that book, and that pertains to like that girlfriend in Denver, that I'm really disappointed to see the kind of women he likes, because the women he's attracted to are like hookers, you know. And so that woman Jeannie, and then later that lady Amelia, and these are, you know, it might be fair to call them hookers because they're trying to use, you know, sexual appearances and, you know, trying to find a guy to be, you know, like their sugar daddy in exchange for being their trophy sex partner or whatever. And that the other thing I would learn is that Bill has been letting women control him and stuff like that, you know. So, you know, maybe it's something that's like if me and him are ever meant to make a connection, again, it might pertain to just my personal life and my personal needs. But it's just really interesting how so many visions and dreams that have like pertinence later, they seem to be relevant later, and things connect later. And so there's been certain things like, okay, so Bill, something my dad told me about Bill in that story, and I was kind of remembering all that back in 2000, and it didn't make sense because it's like it seemed that me and Bill are in contact. And I've been sending him a lot of messages, and sometimes I'm really nice, sometimes I tell him stuff he doesn't like, and but he likes to hear from me, and but he doesn't really want anyone to know about it. So this is where it sounds kind of delusional. Like, wouldn't that be nice if that was the truth? But like, it may not be true. But it's just something that was being told to me. Is because he's always nice to me, and he's like, just feel free, like if you want to correspond with me, you're welcome to do so, but just just don't put weird stuff about me on Facebook. So me and him talked about that, and he asked me, please don't do that. If you want to talk to me, please, just write to me here. And so in reality, me and him, I do have a place to like write him and stuff, but like, he doesn't write back very much. He's just kind of treating me like a fan and just be like, hey, thanks for the message. Have a nice day. And that type of thing. So like, I appreciate him for trying to be nice, like if he's not really interested in knowing me. But that's where it kind of corresponds with some of these old visions and like that. But let me see, in 2009, I went down to Arizona, and somebody told me about this lady, Amelia, that's going to put me in touch with Bill Lieb in the future. And then when I came back, my roommate Janet gave me a similar lecture about Amelia. And so I was told about this person, so that's going to carry over into my trip to Montana, where I actually do get to know Amelia a little bit. And then I go to Vision Quest, where funny thing is I didn't really have any visions up there, but I learned a lot of stuff. It didn't really help me find a lot of resolve with Bill, but it was very important, and I really want to talk more about that in a different video. But yeah, like my dad was telling me something about some Austrian guy coming up to him, and I started thinking, oh my God, I wonder if that's another one of those visionary slips, And so I'm kind of prophesying that Bill Lieb might like go up to my dad while he's swimming at his pool and talk to him or something, and that's kind of scary to me. Like, so that sounds kind of delusional. So that's where I'm like, this stuff is driving me crazy, and I need to get out of Denver so that way I'll quit trying to meet Bill Lieb, because I feel like, just there was a lot of weird stuff like around 2007 and 8 that was kind of surfacing, and I'm just like, you know what? Like, I gotta quit trying to mess with this guy, Bill. I really wanted to put him behind me. So that's part of where, like, I decided to come to Montana, because Rosie let me talk about a lot. She's my friend that died at the age of 80 2 years ago, So we're like almost 35 years apart in age, But, she's kind of like an elder to me, a spiritual teacher. And what she did was she got me to come and be sort of like an in-home companion and a close friend. And that way I was able to learn some really valuable stuff, but she really helped me to kind of work through my Bill Lieb stuff, and she didn't really try to like, she was just really helpful, because she has a lot of weird experiences and stuff like that. So it was kind of good having her around, because that's when I was able to come face to face with him more, like 2010, getting on Facebook and all that. And then at different times she was there to sort of like support me and give me somebody to talk to. And so since she's died 2 years ago, that's where I've been doing these videos to sort of like kind of get through all these stories, and it's taken me way longer than I expected. So anyways, I really wanted to kind of go back and just sort of talk about how I distinguish between fantasy and reality, and so that I try to look at everything with a healthy sense of skepticism. Because I'm dealing with something that's in the unknown. However, I'm finding plenty of confirmation that people do go to visionary state. It's a real thing. However, there's a lot of confusion in there with Bill Lieb, like maybe he's a white rabbit. We're not supposed to connect. I'm just supposed to learn from him. That could be all it is. But at the same time, this is somebody who I value greatly, and somebody who I would like to keep as a friend if possible. But at the same time, it really just depends on his mindset and all that type of stuff. If he's willing to be open-minded and he's willing to be able to understand me, I'd really appreciate that, because that's really all that I can ask for. I think to be understood is like one of the best things that anyone could give you, and it's priceless. I mean, there's like no amount of money that could be a good trade, like I don't care how much jewelry you buy me, if you could take me around the world. But if Bill Lieb could just understand what I'm trying to tell him, that would be real nice. Even if, it doesn't lead up to anything, it's to be able to understand each other. And that's where I feel like he's just kind of been putting me off. He's been kind of deliberately ignoring me and just letting me spin my wheels. And I feel like it's kind of a mean joke, you know. But at the same time, you know, I can understand, like, at the moment he doesn't feel interested, but, like, he could look into it. So, point being, I need Bill to be more open-minded and be willing to understand, rather than just making assumptions and just like, oh, yeah, this sounds like somebody that's just, you know, off her rocker, you know, just, you know, like, people are so crazy, and it's just like, you know, the world these days, man, you never know who you can trust, blah, 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 blah. He's kind of got this type of mindset where, he's not really giving me a chance, and I can understand he's got a high number of people that would love the chance to talk to him. But at the same time, I think I do have a special reason, you know, that I don't think anyone else in the world has a reason just like this. But, you know, I was kind of thinking over the years, you know, maybe this is a divine intervention because, you know, like if Bill's, I don't know, like maybe it's a cry for help, like, please don't forget who I am, because, you know, if Bill Lee, for example, has a drug problem or something like that, maybe somebody needs to, like, because, like, that's come up in the past. And that's something that we fought about, is having someone tell me that is coke. And when I got mad, I kind of used that to be rude. And I shouldn't really laugh at that, because that's a very life-threatening issue. And so I just want to, you know, make sure, like, if there's anything Bill needs from me by any chance, I sure hope I could be there for him. And if there's something that needs to change, if his life is going pretty good, I'm happy for him. But I just really hope he's not at risk, and that this isn't a warning to me to, like, reach out to him in time to, like, you know, like, because that sounds like a big fantasy, you know, and I know that's the type of stuff, you know, stalkers think and all that, like, oh, she needs me, I have to help this lady, nobody loves them, and da-da-da. So for me, you know, this is something I'm very skeptical about, very conscientious about how stupid I look, right? How crazy I look and all that. But, you know, I'm actually a pretty sane person if you look at the fact that I'm, you know, I actually stay out of trouble quite a bit. You know, I really don't do a lot of the stuff I see other people doing. And I think, you know, some of the stuff I'm seeing Bill doing, I kind of think it's crazy in the sense that it's nonsensical. But, like, you know, being a crazy old electronic executioner, that's a good crazy. But, you know, being nonsensical and thinking, you know, he's a rock star, he should be dating models. He's, like, wasting all his money and energy on these people who don't really love him. And they just like, you know, the prestige of, like, you know, I'm a model and I'm dating rock stars. So they like the prestige. But one thing you got to look out for, and this is where it could be a lesson in love, is how do you really know you love somebody and stuff like that, you know, and make sure you're not buying into the false sense of love and adoration, you know. So I don't want to be having a false sense of reciprocation where the Billy in my vision really loved me and urged me to remember him, but then the Billy in reality is like, I don't know about that girl, man. She's kind of, you know, so, you know, I got to respect Billy for his point of view. But again, at the end of the day, like, let's say me and Bill Lee just, like, really talked things out and just had a nice clarity of understanding. It would put us at peace together, you know, instead of him just going through life. Because when you're presenting information to somebody so they know the truth about something and they choose to ignore it, that's called being ignorant. Okay, so that's not being a wakeful person. And I really see Bill Lee as, you know, somebody that's strong-minded and very wakeful. But in this sense, I feel like, okay, he's been acting kind of closed-minded, and he seems to enjoy the assumption that, you know, there's something wrong with me, and that kind of adds to his adventure as a rock star, that, you know, he's had this, and this. He's got women chasing him, he's got groupies, he's got stalkers, he's even got this crazy lady from Montana. So it might add to his sense of adventure to think that I'm a crazy person bothering him or something like that. But for me, it's not like me to really go that far out of my way for a person in Bill's position. But in this case, you know, I'm not really sure what to do with Bill, because I've kind of gotten some confirmation more recently, like, you know, to him, I'm just a fan, you know. He doesn't really want to bond with his fans so much, and just, you know, tries to keep his circle small. And so I think he's, you know, that's definitely a good way to go about it. And that he's kind of saying he's never really given much thought to it and stuff. So I just feel like, maybe it's a dead-end street. At any rate, you know, Bill, if you're watching, I do love you very much, even if you're not marriage material. But you're somebody, you know, like I've been trying to tell you about, like Rosie. Just the parallel is that we met in the visionary state, and then we met in reality. Like with Rosie, we were good friends. She was somebody, you know, that she trusted me a lot. She saw the good in me and all that stuff. But and then Bill, on the other hand, if you're watching, you're somebody that has had more of an acquaintance with me, where you seem to feel threatened by me, and you're kind of avoiding me, and and yet somehow we're still in touch. So I do think there's something very magical that we're still in touch, and regardless, you know, because I'm a very forgiving person and I like to achieve clarity. This is something where it's not the end of the trip. It could be in the beginning. And this is somebody, you know, like, you know, Bill, if you're listening, we could be friends for the rest of our life, and it might be, you know, well worth it. It might be very good. And it would be an exception. I'm making a big exception, a huge exception. And I think I'm being very generous and kind-hearted. And so, like, I kind of want Bill Lieb, if you're listening, to also make a nice big exception and just sort of like find a way to find the time to talk to me, and just kind of get a state of clarity, like where we can make a clear decision on how, like, if we have any kind of like connection or friendship or how that should be carried about, like, you know, as far as keeping in touch or anything goes. I kind of want to do the right thing. I don't want to like spread gossip and just spread my anger. Like, I'm just like, you know, I've decided I'm a friend of Bill Lieb, and if he doesn't appreciate that, I'm still a friend of Bill Lieb, and that might be crazy. But at the, you know, and if he was somebody to like say accept my friendship, like, you know, like maybe something's gonna click in Bill Lieb, and like, you know what, you are an interesting person. Let's stay in touch. You know, he gets to know me. It could have a happy ending. You know, like, you know how they say happy endings. Not that kind of happy ending. But I do want Bill Lieb, you know, he's lived to be a good age, and he's done a lot of great things in his life. But, you know, if he's going to live any longer, I really want him to be healthy and happy, you know. Like, I just want to be a friend to him. I don't want to be the person that, like, is a problem in his life. So that's where it kind of breaks my heart. Like, I don't want him to think I'm just a problem. I'm just being kind of introduced to him through the wrong channels, and I've been kind of obstinate just because, you know, that's why you got to go back and study this. Get with me, talk to me about it. I'm happy to explain myself, and definitely, I definitely appreciate Bill Lieb a lot. So, like, if you're listening, this is somebody I appreciate, value, probably one of my favorite people, somebody I'd really like to talk to. At this point, I feel like somebody I'd really like to talk to more than anyone else. And again, if this wasn't interesting, I wouldn't keep talking about it, because it's also super embarrassing. It looks really bad. And I love you guys if you're watching. Bill, I love you if you're watching. You guys take care. I'll talk to you next time.